let's look at our TBR, but make it festive. Hello friends, and welcome to day 2 of Bookmas, in which I will be talking about some red and green Christmas books, okay? Not Christmas books technically, but red and green books that gives you the Christmas vibes, because I personally am not a holiday romance, or a holiday book in general, I guess they don't technically have to be romance, reader, but I do still want a way to feel a little bit fun and festive, and the easiest way to do that is to read books that are already on your TBR that are red and green. So I figured we could talk about a few of the red and green books on my TBR. Starting with number 1 really quickly, the absolute least red or green book out of this bunch, we have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I specifically wanted to include this really quickly at the beginning because there is a Christmas scene that every single year I go through and I reread this little scene. I don't necessarily reread the whole book, but the individual scene, it brings me to tears every time, and it's so sweet. I love it so much. And I just pulled out the Trad Pub edition, and technically this is more of a dark teal kind of a green, but her name's in red. So arguably, like low-key, it is a little bit of a red and green book. Feel free to read it. If you haven't already read this, this is a crime. This is my favorite contemporary romance book, literally ever. Would recommend. Moving on to the actual red and green books though. A series that I recently read, we have Servant of Earth, Princess of Blood. I originally picked this up for this video because Princess of Blood is a solid red book, but also if you look at Servant of Earth, the little greenery around the outside of the book in the red with a red dress, she's got a green dress with a little red lining. I feel like this kind of gives Christmassy, right? This book is a fae romantasy in which our female main character Kenna basically gets kidnapped. She's a human. She gets kidnapped out of the human lands to go to the Fae realm along with her bestie, and unfortunately she basically becomes a servant to one of the Earth Court princesses. She has to assist this princess in a series of trials in which this princess, Lyra, is competing to gain her immortality. Nobody's supposed to know that she's assisting in these trials. It's supposed to be all on Lyra's own merit, but little did they know that Kenna is kind of against her will being forced to do these really out of her element, given that she's a human fae contest, and she's kind of like, help, I just kind of want to live. And it is actually so much fun. I think because we have a female character that is going through trials, but she's not necessarily the one in the trials, it gives a little bit of a fun and fresh take on a trial. However, find the politics in this world to be real interesting. Book 2 though, okay? I would say if you're interested in reading book 2, I would try to binge read it a little bit more, because I feel like if you do try to read this in tinier chunks, it could get a little slow, because the whole question of this book is trying to resolve and or come to terms with some of the events that happened in book 1. And there's a little bit of him and haw, and there's a little bit of trying to investigate what's going around. So I could see that being a little bit slower if you do not necessarily binge it. I binged it and I gave this book 5 stars. I gave this 4.5 stars. I would recommend the series. It was actually so fun. I felt like these were both really fast reads and they weren't big brain at all, which honestly during holiday season, the best. Book number 2 is a book that I actually read during the red and green reading vlog that I did last year during Bookmas, and it is Fear of the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This book is a dragon-based book. We've got a heist. Our female main character, Elwyn, essentially has been imprisoned by her father, and her father has imprisoned her dragons along with her. She ends up escaping, but her dragons are left behind, and so she has been trying to work kind of in secret, a little bit of princesses hiding, a little bit of heist elements, because she is going to go and steal her dragons back. However, she becomes acquaintances, we can say, with a hottie with a body named Caden. However, he just so happens to be like big baddie enemy kind of, and she's kind of like, a little much, no. But he promises to help her free the dragons if she promises to help him in the war against her father. So she's kind of like, yeah, and you get up to some hijinks from there. So this book is part Hidden Princess, part rivals to lovers, part heist, and I had a really fun time with it. There are really fun bantery moments that makes this book read really fast. It's pretty short in general. It is 370 pages long. It's nothing crazy big brain, anything that's hard to read, but also book 2 is currently out, and book 2 on my TBR, so fast and furious, I'm ready to read. We don't get hardly really any of the dragons in this book, given that we are attempting to rescue them, but book 2, I'm hoping to get somewhere in the dragons. So I'm very excited to read book 2 very soon, but book 1, if you haven't already read it, it's a great book that you should definitely read. And now would be a great time to read it. Okay, let's talk about a couple more books on my TBR, and then we'll switch over to some of the books that I actually have read. This is arguably, aside from Brimstone, one of my, if not number 2 of my most anticipated reads for the year. We have Red City by Marie Lu. I get giddy when I think about reading this book. I have not quite managed to find the time to pick this up. However, I do think that I really want to do a reading some of these TBR red and green books a little bit later in Vlogmas. And you guys, I have a feeling this is going to meet a 5-star. I really need it to be a 5-star, and I think it really will be. We have got a bookmark in here that I didn't realize was in here. I have low-key been looking for this bookmark. Excellent work. Why would I have a bookmark in here if I haven't even started this book? Was I about to start this book? No, I'm not following my past decisions. Anyways, we have a little bit of a alchemy situation, which I feel like is kind of a rising theme, trope, setting, element in books, we can say. This is also an urban setting. And you guys know I love an urban setting. The only question that I have here is that this is technically 2 childhood best friends. Will that work well for me? I do not know. However, I'm really excited about this book. I'm trying to keep myself as blind as possible before I read this book, so I don't want to fully read the synopsis to you. If you're interested, definitely go read the synopsis. However, I really think this book is gonna go so hard. Let's talk about another urban fantasy series. This is urban in the sense that it does take place in a city, but it's more of a steampunk urban vibe. Book 1 being House of Bane and Blood. Both of these books just got traditionally published, and the new cover for House of Bane and Blood is significantly more red, which again fits the theme for this vlog. And then we have the green City of Mirth and Malice. You guys, if you have not already read these series, I have been screaming about the rooftops, and so has literally everybody else. I think I initially picked this up because of covers with Cassidy, and when I say that I'm so thankful for the recommendation, I'm so curious to see what Alexis Elmenard does with new books moving forward, because I just feel like she could be a new favorite author of mine because these books were just so fun. So the premise of this book, we have the female heir to a family steam train dynasty. Their business is going broke a little bit. Their father just passed, they got a whole bunch of brothers, and they're really just trying to avoid bankruptcy at all cost. So her brothers essentially force her into an arranged marriage with someone who can provide some money to the cause. However, we have a very handsome, handsome, a little Nico that sneaks in. I love this main male character, you guys. He sneaks in and essentially takes over and says, well, you're gonna marry me instead. And she says, this sounds like a much better deal, and you're also a lot hotter. Okay. They end up marrying each other. She gets to spend a lot of time with his family, which I absolutely loved. And then we also have a forced proximity, marriage of convenience. My favorite trope, okay? I think that this book did the romance so freaking well. I think the overall plot was also really interesting, and you do definitely get a lot more of the plot in book 2. The romance for this series, though, is what really stands out to me, and I loved it. So if you haven't already read book 1, House of Bane and Blood, book 2, City of Mirth and Malice, would really recommend. Let's switch gears for just a second. We'll get back to more of the silly, goofy fantasy romance that you guys know I love. However, the last couple of weeks have been doing a lot of road trippy, travel-y stuff, and I have figured out that my favorite time to read a more epic fantasy and or a more big brain political fantasy is when I listen to the audiobook when I'm on a road trip and I'm driving and I have nothing to do but listen to that audiobook, and I find that so much fun. One of the audiobooks that I actually listened to during a time such as that was, in fact, Jade City. Okay, we had Red City coming up a minute ago. I had to bring up Jade City. I have not read Jade War yet. I really desperately want to, but I think that this world, first of all, if you're looking for something to kind of take your brain off of the world going on at the moment, if you want something to just really suck you in and just to be a bigger, more expansive, this is acclaimed as a modern classic, apparently, in one of the blurbs in the back of this book. Incredible series. We have book 1 in Jade City. We are following the Call family, and we have a sibling trio. I also grew up in a sibling trio, and the dynamics between these siblings was so entertaining for me to watch. But in this world, Jade essentially gives the users certain extra magical powers, kind of. It gives them like extra strength, and they can use Jade to do a whole bunch of different things. And as such, Jade is kind of a scarce, finite resource that people are in the business of controlling, and one of those families is the Call family. So the Call family is one of, I think, 4 clans. Yes, 4 clans of the people who are Greenbone warriors, who are the people who are able to use Jade. They are currently at peace. However, war is starting to brew again, and their grandparents fought a real nasty war, and they're doing everything that they can to prevent this war from happening. Chaos ensues. So book 1 really sets up the world. It sets up the sibling dynamics. It sets up a lot of the people in this environment, but it introduces some conflict. My guy, taken out, okay? This is definitely something that I personally have to be in the mood to read, which is why I didn't immediately pick up Jade War. However, I have an itching to read these. These covers have also been redesigned, so Jade City is definitely a lot more green now. So if you're looking for just like a extra green book to read around the season, here you go. However, I definitely want to continue reading the series sooner rather than later because I don't currently own book 3, and I would like to get a copy of book 3 in these old covers before that does change over. However, I really love this book one. We're really excited for book two when I get to it. Okay, I think I have one more urban book out of all of these. I didn't realize where all the urban books came from, and I absolutely love it. But we have Tear at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a book that I, yet again, really predict that I'm gonna give 500,000 million % 5 stars. I was gonna go with 500,000 million stars. Not percent of a 5 star. You get what I'm saying. I'm gonna really like this book. I really hope, because this is yet again urban fantasy. I have been told by the synopsis that I read eons ago. I want to keep myself blind before I go into this book, so I don't want to reread the synopsis now. There is a little bit of a religious system in this book. It's also an urban fantasy. Like, that's really all I need to know. I've heard really great things about it. I've heard really great things about it, in fact, and I've heard really great things about it. I don't want to know what the really great things are before I read it though. So I would definitely prefer to read this sooner rather than later, but I think, dog. Also, I was really surprised that this book did not make any form of a Goodreads nomination list. Like, it just didn't quite rank. And from the overall, like, reviews that I've heard about this book, that surprised me, truthfully. So I want to know what this book is about. I would like to read it for myself. Thank you so much. All right, let's do another red book because I think I'm slowly dwindling down on the amount of green books that I have in this list. If you've never tried to find green books, the number of series that start with the green book as the first book in the series, no, not a thing apparently. There are quite a few series, like if you look at all of Elsie Silver's, and I read Wild and Wrangled last year, Lost and Lassoed. Lost and Lassoed is definitely the green one from Lila Sage's series. There are several books in those series that are green, but no, there's not a lot of series that start with green books. So if you have any green books that you would like to recommend, definitely comment those down below, because I'm very curious. Anywho, since we have another red book to talk about, and that is none other than The Things Gods Break. I read the Games Gods Play a couple months ago. In fact, you will be seeing a Pretty Books edition of TBR Takedown as a video later on in BOOKMAS, where I read book one. I really liked book one. I had such a fun time with it. It is very much so brain off, just vibe, silly, goofy. Let's read a Hades retelling, but that's not a Persephone retelling, which I think gave this series overall a little bit of a different vibe. There were trials. It was very fast paced. It was very fun. I feel like that's really good, perfectly timed. Like, it's a good time to read this book because it's not so brain heavy necessarily. Like, it's not Jade City. If you want Jade City, that is a vibe. If you want something a little more silly, goofy, maybe read this. If you have not already read book one, that is a teal book. It's not green, but like, it's not green. This for sure is red though. But I know a lot of people read book one, and maybe this will be your next book to read in the series, because this did come out pretty recently. For me, however, this is the next book in the series that I am so excited to read, and this is definitely on the TBR for hopefully this time of year. If I don't manage to read it during December this year, I would really like to read it soon, because I had a fun time with it, and I would really like to read it sooner rather than later. And I'd really like to read it as close to me finishing book one as possible. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Okay, speaking of green books, we have Fallen Stars by Imani Aru. I have yet to get my hands on a copy of the traditionally published version, but this cover just, I love it. As someone whose favorite color is green, that is a book that I want to read. I mean, also just because I really liked Hidden Bodies book one in this series. This is essentially a celestial, the series is so hard to describe unless you actually read it, but we have Alara. She is on the run from her kingdom. She's got some magic, and she essentially escapes to a rival kingdom. And there's a rival prince who, yet again, honey with a body, just so happens to teach her how to use her magic. I forget if he's like a king or if he's technically a star in this world, but think Big Bad, who is out to kill her, because there has been a prophecy that someone who sounds a whole lot like Alara is going to kill him and going to be the ruin of him and the end of him. And he's like, no, thank you. She gets ousted from her kingdom, and she is just trying to survive at this point. However, Enzo, Enzo, Alara, the cutest little couple that you have ever seen in your entire life. I thought that the world building was really interesting, where we have these celestial like stars. They're in like people form. It's really interesting to read about. I read Heavenly Bodies. I read it back before it was ever trad pub, so I decided to wait before I picked up book two, because at that point it was going to be a minimum of 3 years before we ever got the final book in the series, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait for a minute. So I'm really excited to jump back in to book two now that it has been re-released. The ending of book one. The ending of book one is something that I still to this day think about. It is insanity. So I really would love to not be sitting on that cliffhanger anymore. So Fallen Stars is definitely on the TBR for hopefully really, really soon. I'd really love to read this during BOOKMAS this year, but hopefully really soon, if not now. I'm gonna throw this book out really quickly just for funsies. We have The Hobbit. Most of the the covers for this book are green. This just so happens to be the one that I own. However, this book is very cozy, very silly goofy, very Hobbit core. If that's a style of book that interests you, I think this would be a really good time of year to read this book. This is something that feels to me, I always thought it was going to be really unapproachable, and it's literally just a silly goofy fun time. If you're road tripping to go see family and you need a save for work audiobook, this could be a fun one. We have number 1, Blood and Steel, and number 2, Iron and Embers. This is the start to the Legends of Thesmore series. I kicked off 2025 with reading the series, had the absolute most favorite fun time. I know that this book is mostly black with the teeniest bit of red, and that is because this book is really what's on my TBR. We have Iron and Embers. I've yet to start the series, and I thought it would be really fun because I started off the year reading this series to end off the year with this series, maybe? I don't know. We'll see if I actually get to it, but I think this book is gonna go so hard. We had the introduction to the female and male main characters in this book. We had the intro in the last book in this. Well, I guess technically we had the intro in the third book. I don't know. They had been built up towards the end of the series, and I really want to know what's going on. So if you have not already read this series, start here. Bonus points because the book just so happens to have a little bit of red on it. I feel like it counts. Kind of, not really, a little bit, but ultimately, I know a lot of people read the series. If you haven't started Iron and Embers yet, girl, like what? This is going to be an immediate, please let me read this, I beg of you. But then also the last book in this series, Silver and Smoke, I do believe is what it's called. The book in the middle is blue, but the last book is in fact green. So you get 2 books for the price of 1 here. 2 seconds later, I stopped recording and realized that I didn't talk about arguably the most red and green series of them all being, I mean, it's not like really red and green, but like, I just feel like they fit. And also if I can campaign at any point in my life to get people to read Daughter of No Worlds and the rest of the Word of the Lost Heart series, what am I doing? So number 1, Daughter of No Worlds, super red book, Children of Fallen Gods. It's pretty, I mean, it's got some red on it, but there's actually a lot of green on this. There is a lot of blue to the top, but it could count for green energy to me. And then we have the last book being Mother of Death and Dawn. I cried. You should read these books if you haven't already. I'm so sorry in advance. And one more from another couple of minutes later, and I think I forget because I have the Barnes & Noble edition instead of the regular edition, but we have Bride and Maid by Ali Hazelwood. Maid is actually supposed to be a green book, but I, again, got a different version. The regular version of Maid is, in fact, green. We got a red book 1, being Bride. We got a green book 2. This fun. Okay, I love a paranormal romance. I love reading books from authors in which these authors are just doing their passion projects. They're just writing whatever the heck they want to write because it's fun, not because they feel like they need to do that to add it to their backlist. Like, they just want to have fun. That's what this series is. I'm so excited to read Fate. I love to be alive. Now, ideally, I would do something as so silly goofy as to recommend, okay, we have to do it. Mostly because I know it's over here somewhere. Emphasis on somewhere. Hello? Aha! Okay, I wasn't gonna bring it up because I just feel as if I'm a broken record at this point. Red Rising literally has red in the title. If you've not already read Red Rising, I know that it can be very polarizing. Some people absolutely love this book, other people absolutely hate it. And if you don't know which one you are, maybe give it a go. This is another book that has a really good graphic audiobook, but I do feel as if the regular audiobook for this, I read most of book 1 with my eyeballs, I think, but then I also ended up switching over to immersive reading the rest of the series. This is kind of similar to Jade City in the fact if you're looking for a slightly more, I wouldn't say that Red Rising is as involved because Red Rising in and of itself is not a space opera. It definitely gets more space opera-y as the further books go along. And I could almost even say that you could, I don't want to say that you could or that you should read Red Rising as a standalone, but if you're not someone who loves a space opera and you know that you don't love it, you could still like book 1. There are so many incredible moments from book 1 that just would, for me, make reading book 1 only completely worth it. If you have not met Severo yet, I'm so sorry, but it is your absolute duty to meet Severo. I do also currently have part 2 of the graphic audiobook. I got through part 1 of the graphic audio on a reread a couple months ago at this point. I have part 2 borrowed from the library currently, so I might finish doing my reread sometime over the next month or so. However, if you haven't already read Red Rising, I would say you should give it a go. I do also, for the sake of not having very many green books, and I do own a copy of Lovelight Farms, this is really one of the only holiday romances back when I was still reading them that I actually really enjoyed. I do feel as if because the rest of this series kind of goes off into a different seasonal tangent, I had a really fun time with this. Again, I'm not the biggest contemporary romance reader in the world. These kind of like cutesy ones are not necessarily my favorite. However, would recommend this. However, if you're looking to try out a holiday romance, I mean, I'm not your best place to get a recommendation for holiday romances. I also know that Good Spirits is also getting a lot of hype, and there's a ghost. One of my favorite Christmas movies is about a ghost. It could be a vibe. It could be a vibe. So if you have any recommendations for books that have either a red or a green cover, please leave them in the comments down below. I feel like I ended up with a pretty decent list for myself here, but I know that there are infinite more books. I feel like every book on my TBR right now is red, but I know that there are so many more books that I'm not even thinking about. If you have made it this far into the video, is your favorite color, if you had to pick between red or green, which would you choose? Leave the heart emoji for that particular color. I personally would leave a green heart because I much prefer green to red in the comments below. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next Bookmas video.